report to the SEC, and they said that they saw unauthorized activity within their database on May 20th, and on May 27th, hackers had offered to sell the Ticketmaster data for $500,000 on the dark web. Phishing is a big, where they send the email and you click on a link, is a big attack vector, but they were also targeting RDP was being attacked. And if you just, used a certificate, had two-factor authentication, had a jump server, there's just different measures you can do to protect. The first thing that always pops to my mind is artificial intelligence. Anything you talk about new technology, because it's really, it's being used in all areas now. And so I'm sure that it's going to be used in security awareness training to a certain extent.
Well, hello, welcome listeners. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce a distinguished expert in cybersecurity and data transformation. With over 20 years of experience in the field, Debra Baker has been recognized as one of the top 100 women in cybersecurity by Cybercrime magazine and one of the top 10 eminent women in security by CIO Look in 2021. As a co-founder of the League of Women in Cybersecurity and the founder of the Johns Hopkins University Cryptographic Knowledge Base, Debra is a prominent advocate for women in the cybersecurity field. She's also featured in the book Women Know Cyber: 100 Fascinating Females Fighting Cybercrime. I am extremely honored to have her today with us. So, hello, Debra.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
My first question to you is, with a career spanning over 2 decades in cybersecurity and holding pivotal roles such as CEO and VCISO at TrustedCiso, as well as significant positions at companies like RedSeal, Entrust, and Cisco, you've built and managed comprehensive security programs and successfully guided organizations through rigorous compliance processes. Can you start by sharing what initially drew you to the field of cybersecurity? Was it a dramatic encounter with a hacker, or perhaps an unquenchable curiosity about the digital world?
Yeah, for me, I kind of ended up in cybersecurity by accident, which happens a lot of times with people. But I was in high school in the 1980s. So a long time ago, but we knew computers were, the thing of the future. And I took 2 years of basic programming and I hated it. And I was like, oh, computers it's not for me. Because I thought you had to be a programmer to be in computers, which you don't have to be. There's so many different jobs in computers you don't have to be, but I didn't know that. And I ended up going to college, and I actually got a business degree in finance, which is interesting.
Yes.
And it was like where I was working, it was too sales oriented, and I was like, this isn't working out for me. And I ended up going into the Air Force, which is I never thought I would do. And I took, they took like a placement exam. And they said, you would be good in computers. I was like, I would? Okay, well, all right, I'll try this. And ended up doing, networking, base networking. And so starting out in IT. And I first got exposed to cybersecurity. They had like a really great training program where they were starting. So I did like my first pen test just in the training course. And so that's where I first got exposed to it. But I really started out as networking because I really didn't even have cybersecurity. Back then it was, you have a firewall. Okay, now we have an internal network. Okay, we're safe. It was so different from what it is now. But got out of the Air Force, went to work at IBM. And that, in networking, I was a DNS administrator, but I got to work in there were different groups, like we had a firewall team and different groups in my department. So I got exposed to all different areas of networking. And a friend was like, hey, let's go to this job fair. And I was not looking to leave IBM, and Entrust Technologies is there, and they are a PKI software development firm, and they offered me a job on the spot.
Oh.
And it was almost double the pay. This was the buildup to the big .com boom. That's when they were trying to decide, can the internet be used for business? Which is almost seems laughable now, but that's actually where it was. And they trained me on cryptography and encryption, and that's really where I started moving more into the cybersecurity space.
Wow, that sounds like a very fun ride. In a recent YouTube video, you discussed the Ticketmaster hack in detail. Could you walk us through the sequence of events from the initial breach to the hackers attempting to sell the data on the dark web? How did Ticketmaster respond, and if you were in their shoes, what would you have done differently to avoid becoming the headline news?
Okay, so yeah, when I first looked into the Ticketmaster, it first became public when they had to actually report to the SEC. So if you're a publicly trading company, you have to report within 4 days of a substantial incident, not something small, but something major. And so they made their report to the SEC, and they said that they saw unauthorized activity within their database on May 20th. And on May 27th, hackers had offered to sell the Ticketmaster data for $500,000 on the dark web. And this affected 560 million customers. So that's the first thing. So I started delving into it, and then I saw another article, and Snowflake had made a statement saying this didn't have anything to do with us. And I thought, they said we weren't breached. And I was like, well, that's really weird. Why are they, responding? And so as I looked into it further, what I found out is that Ticketmaster was using Snowflake as their data repository. And so then, so it does tie into Snowflake, but, and this is something with the cloud and the shared responsibility model, is that you're always responsible for your own data. And so even though the data was in Snowflake, what happened is they did not have multi-factor authentication configured. And what hackers targeted Snowflake. So there's like hundreds of Snowflake customers that were hacked. And they were customers that did not have two-factor authentication configured. And what they were doing is individually, as they hacked these individual customers' data, then they were trying to, extort them and say, we want this payment, or they were trying to sell the data on the dark web. So it's actually much bigger than just Ticketmaster. And it goes back to, doing those basic cybersecurity hygiene, which I just published a book, CISO Guide in Cyber Resilience, and CISO Guide to Cyber Resilience. And the number one, I created a roadmap, and the first chapter is about a fictional ransomware attack and how the CISO, what she does to stop it and then recover from the attack. And then the rest of the book, each chapter is a specific area in cybersecurity that you need to focus on when building your security program that would actually defend from the, ransomware attack. And the first thing, and I also created a roadmap, and the very first thing I have is multi-factor authentication, because it's just critical that 99.9% of account attacks can be stopped just by using multi-factor authentication.
Definitely. That's the security basic these days.
Yeah.
Third question is, in your video course in cyber resilience, you emphasize the importance of building a culture of security awareness within organizations. Considering the rapid advancements in technology and the evolving nature of cyber threats, what innovative methods or emerging technologies do you believe will play a crucial role in enhancing cybersecurity education and resilience in the next decade? And if you had a magic wand, what one change would you make to the current state of cybersecurity education?
So the first thing that always pops in my mind is artificial intelligence. Anything you talk about new technology, because it's really, it's being used in like all areas now. And so I'm sure that it's going to be used in security awareness training to a certain extent. And one thing it could be, typically now you just have a set of videos that you go through and all of your coworkers go through. But one thing it could do is if it maybe understood that particular user's role better, then it could customize the training. It can keep up with like a profile of the customer and like more customize the training, possibly tie into like if there's little quizzes or whatever, kind of get a feel of where they're at, and then could adjust.
Right.
And you could have like different levels of the training. This is just, off the top of my head, but I know that AI is being used in all aspects. And so that's like the first thing. I would say that for the magic wand is just, trying to stay on top of like whatever these latest hacks are. Now I'm doing these YouTube videos and things and going in and talking about, what's the root cause, what you can do to protect. It turns out there's another book, and I reference it in the beginning of my book, but essentially they did all this data analytics on like every single, like 95% of breaches, and it all goes back to like 6 different root causes. And so I talk about this in my book, and then I say, about my book is do these security measures to protect yourself from these 6 root causes.
Right.
And so it's just understanding, what happened, what happened in the attack, and what you can do, talking about it, and then what you can do in your own organization and for your own, online to protect your data.
Right. Okay, so my next question is, imagine you could only pick one security measure. It could either be antivirus, EDR, application firewall, encryption, or a VPN, to take with you on a desert island where cyber threats exist. Which one would you choose and why? And bonus points if you can make your choice sound like the ultimate survival tool.
Says if I could choose only one security measure to take with me to a desert island where cyber threats lurk in every shadow, I would choose multi-factor authentication, MFA. It says, picture this, you're standing on an island, not just battling the elements, but also fighting off relentless cyber threats that strike when you least expect it. You need a survival tool that offers the ultimate line of defense, something that stands strong against any attack. Enter multi-factor authentication. The digital equivalent of a fortified bunker with a biometric lock and a secret code. I love it. It sounds like a movie trailer.
My next question is, in one of your videos, you mentioned that 99% 99.9% of attacks on user accounts can be prevented with multi-factor authentication. Can you provide a detailed explanation of the most effective multi-factor authentication methods and share some amusing anecdotes or insights on why these methods are so successful in thwarting cyber attacks?
Yeah, I would say the best MFA is, one of the things is you can have a separate like USB card. Like in the government, they actually have, a separate little device that you would plug in your computer that has a certificate on it. There is one, I was trying to remember what the name of it is. I can't remember. There's one that you can buy. The downside is you have to always have that with you. That's the downside. Now, the second thing is the market's moving towards passkeys, which is still another form of multi-factor authentication. But what you want to do is store that passkey in a password manager. So such as Bitwarden, 1Password, or LastPass. And then, because now you have to be able to access that key, but in the password manager. Because if you just store it in like your Apple keychain, for example, and somebody actually got access to your phone, then they would also have access to your passkey.
Right.
And one of the things that was in the news recently is there's actually like hacker gangs, and they're targeting college students like at bars, and they'll, get them, they'll the old time, shoulder surf and see what their PIN code is, get them to unlock their phone and then steal their phone. And what happens is a lot of people are just using their default Apple password for like their banking and everything, and they're not using a separate password manager, and then they just have access and will just like drain their bank account. Yeah. So just having that second, use the password manager. So even if somebody got access to your phone, they wouldn't, have access to everything. And of course use, individual passwords for each site. And it's a pain. The Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, it's free. And yes, you have to pull your phone up. Yes, you have to put that code in. But it's just, it's not that much extra, and that is going to protect your accounts.
So the recent controversy around the SolarWinds hack exposed vulnerabilities in software supply chains, causing widespread concern in the cybersecurity community. What are your thoughts on this incident, and what measures do you believe companies should implement to better secure the supply chains against the sophisticated attacks?
First off, like when you really look into the SolarWinds attack, it was really just doing your due diligence and basic cybersecurity. I mean, they didn't have, like just patching, making sure you have updates, making sure you don't have, ports open to the internet that are easily hackable. So it was, if you really looked into the details, it was just like they had this open to where the hackers were able to get onto the network. So just doing that due diligence, best practices would have been able to thwart this. What happens is if you get behind on your patching, you get behind on just doing these basic security measures, whether it's, multi-factor authentication, or for a while, phishing is a big, where they send the email and you click on a link, is a big attack vector, but they were also targeting RDP was being attacked. And if you just, used the certificate, had two-factor authentication, had a jump server, there's just different measures you can do to protect. Okay. So basically they got access to their network. Once they get access to your network, then what they'll do is they kind of like hide out They don't want to do a lot of things that's going to cause, alarms to go off on the IDS, IPS, the different sort of tools that you have on their network. So they'll try to do, quietly, they're going to try to like map out your network and figure out where is whatever that data, the sensitive data, that they can go and sell on the dark web or ransom. So it's either going to be like your HR or your employee data, your customer data. If you're a software company, it's going to be your source code. So what they did is they went and they targeted the source code. And what they did is they put a back door into the code, and they didn't have, they didn't have like integrity checks or whatever on their code, that when this code was added, nobody like noticed. There wasn't any alarm or, where did this code come from or what account or anything like that. And then when all of their customers did their regular patching for that next release, now that back door was in all the customers' SolarWinds. And what it does is it maps out your network. So now that was a way for them to basically hack into all those different, government agencies and customers and things like that. And so it's really just going back to, doing those basic things for security, and making sure, what they got behind, and it got to the point to where they didn't have the budget and they didn't have the resources to fix the things that were wrong. And the SEC is actually going after the CISO, which, it's frustrating to me because the CISO's job is to try to protect and lower the risk, of the organization. And, I hate it that they're the ones that they're going after, basically. And in this case, he understood what the issues were. So they were able to look through emails, and they were able to look through presentations that had been done. But what they said is that he hadn't adequately briefed the executive management above him in order to get the resources, in order to get the information. Like the risk report, it was more general. This particular risk, which was known, wasn't communicated up to the executive management. So every CISO needs to make sure that they are telling the executive management, exactly like the risks that are there. So they can get, because it's the executive management's job to approve the budget and the resources. So the CISO can't go and get the budget and, all he can do is he or she can do is try to influence the executive management in order to get the resources that they need. And so that's where they came back down on the CISO. They said, well, he didn't do what he didn't brief them properly. So we will never know because we don't have those meeting minutes. We don't have those details, right?
Right.
But it definitely needs to go back. It needs to be on the executive management team because they're the ones that actually have the budget. They're the ones that can actually say, yep, we're either going to accept this risk. It's up to them. That's the other thing. You can always accept a risk. It needs to be detailed out in the risk register, and the executive management team needs to say, okay, we understand this. We're going to accept this risk.
Right.
And, don't try to, and I get it. The CISO role can be very political, and they're probably like, well, I don't want to tell these people, right, how bad it is. But no, basically the SEC is saying, nope, we want you to tell them all the gory details And then it's going to be on them to make the decision and either give you the budget or say no, and then it's because, definitely don't want to see the CISOs being the ones that they're going after, because they're the ones trying to, secure, lower the risk of the organization. So.
Given your extensive experience in leading digital transformation and cybersecurity initiatives, what advice would you give to startups looking to integrate cutting-edge technologies like AI and quantum computing into their cybersecurity frameworks? And if you could give a single tweet-length piece of advice to new entrepreneurs in this field, what would it be?
Well, of course, AI. I mean, that's so many companies are introducing it. And just think about, like if you're using ChatGPT, make sure that you do the privacy. There's a way to go on there and say, okay, I don't want to share my data. It's better to use either a private LLM or like a GPT that you could set as private. You need to have, like, if you are developing AI or using AI, you should have like an AI policy. So as for the quantum, NIST they're actually deciding on the quantum resistant algorithms now. And for that, it's just, keep your OS and your software updated and patched, because when those come out, they will be put into the cryptographic modules, and then you'll have that quantum resistant algorithms and ciphers and everything. So
okay, so Debra, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really insightful talking to you, and I absolutely loved hearing your opinions.
all right, thank you so much for having me.